History of Visual Arts, Movements and Styles, Timeline of 20th Century Art Movements. A brief overview of the major art movements in the 20th century, along with some of the most important artists and examples of their work. Post-Impressionism is the term coined by the British artist and art critic Roger Fry in 1910 to describe the development of French art since Manet, when he organized the exhibition Manet and the Post-Impressionists. Post-Impressionists extended Impressionism while rejecting its limitations. They continued using vivid colors, thick application of paint, distinctive brushstrokes, and real-life subject matter, but they were more inclined to emphasize geometric forms, to distort form for expressive effect, and to use unnatural or arbitrary color. The Post-Impressionists were dissatisfied with the triviality of subject matter and the loss of structure in Impressionist paintings, though they did not agree on the way forward. For example, Gauguin was recognized for his experimental use of color and synthetist style that were distinguishably different from Impressionism, and was an important figure for the Symbolist movement. Paul Cézanne set out to restore a sense of order and structure to painting, to make of Impressionism something solid and durable, like the art of the museums. He achieved this by reducing objects to their basic shapes, while retaining the bright, fresh colors of Impressionism. Vincent van Gogh used color and vibrant, swirling brushstrokes to convey his feelings and his state of mind. Although they often exhibited together, post-impressionist artists were not in agreement concerning a cohesive movement. Surrealism is a cultural movement that began in the early 1920s and is best known for its visual artworks and writings, and the work often features the element of surprise and unexpected juxtapositions. It developed out of the Dada activities during World War I, with the center of the movement in Paris. From the 1920s onwards, the movement spread around the globe, eventually affecting the visual arts, literature, film, and music of many countries and languages, as well as political thought and practice, philosophy, and social theory. Freud's work with free association, dream analysis, and the unconscious was of utmost importance to the Surrealists in developing methods to liberate imagination. They embraced idiosyncrasy while rejecting the idea of an underlying madness. Later, Salvador Dalí explained it as, "There is only one difference between a madman and me: I am not mad." In 1924, they declared their philosophy in the first Surrealist Manifesto. That same year, they established the Bureau of Surrealist Research and began publishing the journal La Révolution Surréaliste. Abstract Expressionism was an American post-World War II art movement. It was the first specifically American movement to achieve international influence and put New York City at the center of the Western art world, a role formerly filled by Paris. Although the term abstract expressionism was first applied to American art in 1946 by the art critic Robert Coates, it had first been used in Germany in 1919 in the magazine Der Sturm regarding German Expressionism. In the United States, Alfred Barr was the first to use this term in 1929 in relation to works by Wassily Kandinsky. Technically, an important predecessor is Surrealism, with its emphasis on spontaneous, automatic, or subconscious creation. Jackson Pollock's dripping paint onto a canvas laid on the floor is a technique that has its roots in the work of André Masson, Max Ernst, and David Alfaro Siqueiros. The movement's name is derived from the combination of the emotional intensity and self-denial of the German expressionists with the anti-figurative aesthetic of the European abstract schools such as Futurism, the Bauhaus, and Synthetic Cubism. Abstract Expressionism has many stylistic similarities to the Russian artists of the early 20th century, such as Vasily Kandinsky, although it is true that spontaneity, or the impression of spontaneity, characterized many of the abstract expressionists' work. Most of these paintings involved careful planning, especially since their large size demanded it. Although the abstract expressionist school spread quickly throughout the United States, the major centers of this style were New York City and the San Francisco Bay Area of California. Pop art is an art movement that emerged in the mid-1950s in Britain and in the late 1950s in the United States of America. Pop art presented a challenge to traditions of fine art by including imagery from popular culture such as advertising and news, etc. In pop art, material is sometimes visually removed from its known context, isolated and/or combined with unrelated material. The concept of pop art refers not as much to the art itself as to the attitudes that led to it. It is widely interpreted as a reaction to the then dominant ideas of abstract expressionism, as well as an expansion upon them. Pop art is aimed to employ images of popular as opposed to elitist culture in art, emphasizing the banal or kitschy elements of any given culture, most often through the use of irony. It is also associated with the artist's use of mechanical means of reproduction or rendering techniques. Pop art and minimalism are considered to be art movements that precede postmodern art, or are some of the earliest examples of postmodern art themselves. Early pop art in Britain was a matter of ideas fueled by American popular culture, viewed from afar, while the American artists were inspired by the experience of living within that culture. Minimalism in visual art, generally referred to as minimal art, emerged in New York in the early 1960s. Initially, minimal art appeared in New York in the 60s as new and older artists moved towards geometric abstraction, exploring via painting, in the case of Frank Stella, Kenneth Noland, Al Held, Ellsworth Kelly, Robert Ryman and others, and also sculpture in the works of various artists including David Smith, Anthony Caro, Tony Smith, Sol LeWitt, Carl Andre, Dan Flavin, Donald Judd and others. Donald Judd's sculpture was showcased in 1964 at the Green Gallery in Manhattan, as were Dan Flavin's first fluorescent light works, while other leading Manhattan galleries like the Leo Castelli Gallery and the Pace Gallery also began to showcase artists focused on geometric abstraction. As with pop art, minimalism was also a reaction against the painterly subjectivity of abstract expressionism that had been dominant in the New York school during the 1940s and 50s. In contrast to the previous decade's more subjective abstract expressionists, the minimalists explicitly stated that their art was not about self-expression, unlike the previous decade's more subjective philosophy about art making. Theirs was objective. In general, minimalism's features included geometric, often cubic forms purged of much metaphor, equality of parts, repetition, neutral surfaces, and industrial materials. Okay, that's our brief roundup of some of the major movements within the 20th century. Please take time to answer the questions on the TED page, and I'll see you in class. Thank you. Bye.